I really wanted to come to be here today, primarily to speak to you about an opportunity that could be unfolding before us, which I think at this point is hardly a secret. Diocesan leadership, of course, in consultation also with your pastor, we've been looking at a possible diocesan-wide campaign. Dioceses tend to do those every 20, 30, 40 years. And the primary beneficiary of that campaign, if it unfolds, would probably be rebuilding the Newman Center. A movement like this I see across the nation right now. A great many dioceses are doing this, really focusing on Newman Centers. I think it can be kind of reduced down to two primary reasons. One is we want to have a place where our young people still feel a profound welcome. When we did the listening sessions for the Synod, in preparation for the Synod, all across the nation, and our diocese was no different, the sort of number one thing that emerged was people said, our youth, our young people. And I'm one, I joked about confirmation not being today, but I go around our diocese and I do thousands of confirmations every year. And I wonder what happens to these young people that get sent out. I find a university, especially a Newman Center at a university, is one of the wonderful places, both where the faith can be deepened, but it's also a chance, a primary chance for us to cast the net broadly and see who we can bring in. I think it's also an incredible opportunity for evangelization. The second thing is I think renewed Newman Centers mesh beautifully with Pope Francis's concept of church as field hospital. I think we all know what field hospitals do. They triage the most wounded and vulnerable. And even though I'm not one that tends to overly criticize our culture, there are elements of our culture that are very, very troubling. We have an overwhelming sense of growing depression. The experts tell us it's up every year. An increasing sense of helplessness and anxiety. In the Western world, I think a big part of this is our mobility and our increasingly isolated existence. We're severed from family and friends and authentic community. I'm only 64 next month, but I remember what it was like to live in a neighborhood where I actually knew the neighbors. People used to know their neighbors. They lived close to extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and they belonged to a church in the area. I wasn't planning on saying this, but I was pastor for 7 years in Okarche, Oklahoma. Produced a martyr, Blessed Stanley Rother. I think we had about 300 families. It's about 35 miles from Oklahoma City. There was no other parish people could run to. If you lived there, that was it. After that, I went to the cathedral in Oklahoma City, where I had over 1,000 families, but I found that most of my families at the cathedral did not live anywhere in the neighborhood, and they came because we had a $1 million pipe organ and incredible music and lovely liturgy, and it was a beautiful cathedral church, and people were committed, but I sometimes think it was to that 1 hour a week. In fact, sometimes I wonder if we don't settle for too little, or our expectations are too small. I certainly feel for parents and grandparents. I have sisters who are grandparents, but I so oftentimes hear parents say, if my kid would just go to Mass on Sunday. While I certainly understand that, and I don't mean to make any accusation, unkindness, where in the Bible does Jesus say, I just wish people would spend an hour and then live their life as they please? I think the expectation and the goal is so much greater, and it has to do with community. I sometimes like to say you can't really teach anyone the faith. You can teach people things about the faith, but nobody learns faith. You catch it like viruses and bugs. And you catch it by rubbing shoulders and being around people who have it. And the stronger their case, the more likely you are to catch it. And so the point is, neither I nor Father John Paul, I don't think any of us, are particularly interested in pretty buildings. That's not the point. But I do think a renewed university center says to the world, and more locally Southern Arizona, the Diocese of Tucson, and more locally the city of Tucson, and more locally everybody that comes on this campus, that we are here and we're vibrantly alive. And this is the place where you can find community and catch and deepen the faith. So I'm excited about that. Now, the plan is still unfolding, as is a possible diocesan campaign. Today I can't really promise anything, but I would ask for three things that you consider them carefully. The first is prayer. Now, if for a split second your brain said, yeah, right, prayer, now get on to the real, then secularism really has sunk into us. We have a 2,000-year tradition in history that can show you can have all the money in the world and it does nothing if you don't make the right foundation. And the foundation in this case is not 4.5 feet of concrete. The foundation really is asking God, is this what you want of us? And will you bless this? So I really ask that you really take that moment to offer this to God and to see what his response to all of us is. Second, we need to share the vision of what this place can be, and that is no criticism of the University Center today. In my opinion, the Newman Center today is stellar in its ministries and in the way it draws young people and a stable community in. So this isn't a criticism. But I do think a renewed center, again, will be an incredibly visible sign to our community and beyond of who we are and what they can encounter here. And then third, finally, at some point there will be a financial commitment. Students, we're asking each of you to come up with $100,000. Okay, maybe not. My suspicion is the majority of funding will come through the campaign, but again, I can't guarantee that. I do know the diocese can't do it alone, and I suspect, unless some of you are sitting on a pile of gold, you can't do it alone either. But I think if we do pray, if we do share the vision, God is miraculous about prodding us and probing us to do the right thing. I don't mean to rub anyone the wrong way particularly, but I find it interesting that Catholics seem to feel that we have a right to always piggyback on our ancestors and what they've given us in the past. I think every Roman Catholic should just realize at some point in his or her life, you're going to be a part of building a new church somewhere, or some kind of facility, or something for the Lord. That's part of discipleship. When I was in high school, my parents were founding members of Holy Family Catholic Church in Lawton, Oklahoma. They were proud of what they did, and I, to this day, believe that their example of making a sacrificial gift in accordance with their means left a lasting impact on me. As St. Paul and others would say, where your heart is, that's what matters. And in life, where we put our money says a lot about our values. But anyway, that's the third step, and we got to get through step number 1 and number 2 first. So I ask you, prayer, lift this up to God, and let's see what his response is. Second, let's enter into the vision of what we could have here, building upon the tremendous treasure we have. And then finally, let's trust that the money will come. Now, bishops